For more than 2 decades, Judge Judy Sheenlin had watched every kind of deception unfold inside her courtroom. She had dealt with dishonest landlords, manipulative spouses, fake injury claims, and people willing to lie under oath without hesitation. Her reputation was built on toughness, sharp questions, zero patience for excuses, and in all those years, nobody had ever seen her cry. Until the day James Mitchell walked into her courtroom carrying a worn-out letter inside the pocket of his faded military jacket. The 67-year-old veteran stood quietly at the defendant's podium, shoulders stiff with old military discipline. His hands trembled slightly against the railing. Deep lines carved across his face told the story of years spent surviving pain, grief, and loneliness. His jacket looked decades old, but the Purple Heart pin attached to the collar still reflected light proudly. Across from him sat Patricia Brennan, dressed in an expensive designer suit, perfectly composed and completely confident. She was suing James for unpaid rent, property destruction, lease violations, and refusing to leave her apartment complex after eviction notices had been served. Her table was stacked with paperwork, photographs, repair estimates, police reports, witness statements. Everything appeared airtight. Everything made James Mitchell look like another irresponsible tenant who had wrecked an apartment and refused accountability. Judge Judy adjusted her glasses and studied the file. Patricia Brennan versus James Mitchell. More than $6,000 in unpaid rent, thousands more in alleged property damage, months of documented lease violations. She lifted her eyes toward James. Something felt wrong immediately. Judge Judy had spent years reading people within seconds. She knew arrogance when she saw it. She knew fear. She knew guilt. And James Mitchell did not look guilty. He looked defeated. Patricia spoke first, her tone cold and rehearsed. Your Honor, this is a very simple case. Mr. Mitchell repeatedly violated his lease agreement, damaged my property, disturbed other tenants, and refused to pay for repairs. I tried working with him for months, but eventually I had no choice except eviction. She handed over photographs showing damaged drywall, broken fixtures, and destroyed sections of the apartment. Judge Judy studied each image carefully before turning back toward James. Mr. Mitchell, she asked calmly, what do you have to say for yourself? James swallowed hard. For several seconds he said nothing. Then slowly he reached into his jacket pocket and removed a folded letter. The paper looked fragile, worn from being opened countless times. His voice cracked as he spoke. My daughter wrote this before she died. The courtroom instantly fell silent. Judge Judy accepted the letter carefully and unfolded it. The moment her eyes moved across the page, something changed in her expression. The sharpness disappeared. The courtroom audience noticed it immediately. Even Bailiff Byrd stepped closer. Judge Judy read the first lines again, slower this time. Then she looked up directly at Patricia Brennan. This letter, she said quietly, was written by Mr. Mitchell's daughter, Sarah Mitchell. She was an Army medic who served overseas. According to this letter, she also lived in your apartment complex. Patricia shifted uncomfortably. Judge Judy continued. She was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and while she was undergoing treatment, you evicted her. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Patricia straightened in her chair. Your Honor, I don't see how this relates to the current case. Judge Judy's voice hardened immediately. Oh, it relates. She placed the letter carefully on her desk, because what this letter describes is not an isolated situation. It describes a pattern. The courtroom remained completely still. Judge Judy leaned forward. Last night, my staff reviewed public records connected to your business. What they found is deeply disturbing. Patricia's confidence began fading. Judge Judy continued questioning her. You own Patriot Gardens apartments, correct? Yes. You advertise exclusively toward veterans and military families? Yes, Your Honor, I support veterans. Judge Judy nodded slowly. And how many veterans have you evicted in the last 3 years? Patricia hesitated. Maybe 10. Judge Judy opened another folder. Court records show 23, the audience murmured. Every one of those veterans, Judge Judy continued, was evicted after living there between 8 and 11 months. Every one of them received massive property damage charges. Every one of them ended up sent to collections afterward. Patricia's attorney shifted nervously. Judge Judy's eyes narrowed. That doesn't sound accidental to me. Patricia attempted to defend herself. Veterans sometimes struggle with PTSD and behavioral issues. Damage happens. Judge Judy stared directly at her. Sympathetic words from someone who evicted a dying woman. The courtroom froze again. Judge Judy picked up Sarah's letter. Sarah Mitchell informed you she had stage 4 cancer. Medical records confirmed she fell behind on rent because chemotherapy treatments cost thousands of dollars. Patricia folded her arms. I'm a landlord, not a charity. Judge Judy's expression darkened. So you forced her out. I followed the law. Judge Judy's voice dropped out lower. She died 2 months later in a veteran's shelter. Silence, awful silence. Then Judge Judy began reading from the letter. Dad, I'm sorry I couldn't stop the eviction. The treatments made me too weak. Mrs. Brennan came to the hospital asking for money while I was hooked to chemotherapy. I told her I was dying. She said that wasn't her problem. Several people in the audience wiped tears away. Judge Judy continued reading. If she ever comes after you, don't let her win. She targets veterans because she thinks we're broken. Judge Judy stopped reading. For the first time in her television career, her eyes filled with tears. James lowered his head, crying openly. Patricia sat frozen. Judge Judy took a long breath before speaking again. You went into a cancer ward to collect money from a dying veteran? Patricia whispered defensively. That's not how it happened. Then explain how it happened. No answer came. Judge Judy called for a recess. When court resumed, the atmosphere had completely changed. Judge Judy returned, carrying a thick folder filled with financial records. Mrs. Brennan, she began, your company collected more than $400,000 in property damage claims from veteran tenants over the last few years. Patricia's lawyer objected immediately. Judge Judy shut him down instantly. These are public records. Then she revealed something that stunned the courtroom. The contractor responsible for most of these repair charges is RB Construction Services. She flipped through invoices. According to these records, RB Construction billed thousands of dollars for minor repairs. Then she looked directly at Patricia. RB Construction is owned by your brother. The audience erupted in disbelief. Judge Judy didn't stop. You created a system. You targeted struggling veterans with patriotic marketing. Once they moved in, you documented small issues, exaggerated damages, inflated repair costs through your brother's company, and buried them in debt they couldn't pay. Her voice cut through the room like a knife. You destroyed families for profit. Patricia suddenly stood up. This is ridiculous. I run a legal business. Judge Judy slammed her hand against the desk. Sit down. The courtroom instantly fell silent again. Then another voice spoke from the audience. Your Honor, she did the same thing to me. A disabled Navy veteran named Michael Torres approached the witness stand using a cane. He explained how Patricia charged him thousands for installing medical safety bars in his bathroom. When he couldn't pay, she evicted him too. One by one, the pattern became undeniable. Judge Judy looked at Patricia with visible disgust. How many veterans did you destroy? Patricia couldn't answer. Judge Judy announced another recess. When the hearing resumed, 2 investigators from the Attorney General's office had entered the courtroom. Judge Judy delivered her ruling slowly and clearly. Mr. Mitchell, she said, you are not responsible for these claims. You were deliberately targeted by someone who exploited your grief and vulnerability. Then she turned toward Patricia. This court finds your testimony completely unreliable. Your actions represent fraud, abuse, and systematic exploitation of vulnerable veterans. She issued judgment in favor of James Mitchell. Zell dollars owed, all damage claims dismissed. Then came the additional penalties, compensation for emotional distress, punitive damages, restitution, total judgment, $48,500. The courtroom burst into applause. Judge Judy wasn't finished. She ordered Patricia's business records audited, all veteran eviction cases reviewed, any fraudulent charges refunded. And finally, she referred the case for criminal investigation. Your predator days are over. Patricia attempted to protest, but Judge Judy cut her off immediately. You destroyed your own business the moment you decided grieving veterans were profitable targets. As the hearing ended, veterans from the gallery surrounded James. Some hugged him, others cried openly. For the first time in years, James no longer looked alone. Patricia tried leaving quietly, but investigators stopped her at the courtroom exit. Outside the courtroom, everything changed rapidly. The investigation uncovered massive fraud. More victims came forward. Financial audits revealed hundreds of thousands of dollars collected through fake repair claims. Text messages between Patricia and her brother exposed detailed planning of the scheme. They specifically targeted disabled veterans because they believed those tenants were less likely to fight back legally. Months later, Patricia Brennan stood inside a criminal courtroom, facing multiple felony charges. The jury convicted her on fraud, conspiracy, theft, and elder abuse charges. She received 8 years in prison. Her brother received 5. Both were ordered to repay every victim. James attended sentencing quietly. He carried Sarah's letter inside his jacket pocket the entire time, not for revenge, not for victory, but because it reminded him why he survived. That letter changed everything. Veterans who saw the case began sharing their own stories. Housing organizations created new protections. Legal aid groups started monitoring veteran-targeted landlords. James eventually joined a veterans housing program where he received medical care, counseling, and stable housing for the first time in years. Other veterans helped him rebuild his life. A support group formed around Sarah's story. They called themselves Sarah's Warriors. James began speaking publicly at veterans centers and housing conferences, warning others about financial predators who targeted former service members. Sarah's letter became more than evidence. It became a symbol. Within a year, dozens of veterans facing fraudulent evictions received legal help through organizations inspired by the case. Patricia's apartment complexes were eventually sold and converted into legitimate, affordable housing. The buildings were renamed Mitchell House. At the reopening ceremony, Judge Judy stood beside James while reporters captured photographs that spread across the country. When asked later about the case, Judge Judy admitted something she rarely revealed publicly. "In all my years," she said, "that letter was one of the most powerful things I've ever read." James eventually purchased a small home in a veteran community outside the city. He framed Sarah's military photograph beside the letter that exposed everything. Every Sunday, he visited her grave, carrying carnations, her favorite flowers, and every visit ended the same way. "You protected people, baby girl," he would whisper. "You saved families," because in the end, Sarah Mitchell's final words accomplished exactly what she hoped they would. They exposed the truth, they protected her father, and they proved that even one voice, written on a worn-out piece of paper, can destroy an entire system built on cruelty.